Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. There was an interesting roundtable meeting held, publicly held, just a few days after the Israeli bombardment of Gaza, and it included the head of the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund. It included the CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink, Ray Dalio, Jamie Dimon, and a few other controllers of global financialized capital. They discussed the future of the global economy, and the future of the Middle East. Now, understand that these people, the people sitting at that round table, represent a floating national superpower that dwarfs the United States and any other country in terms of their power and control over policy. It's worth noting, I think, that no one at that meeting appeared particularly alarmed by the situation in Palestine and Israel. They were doing what you would expect them to do, which is to sort of plan around contingencies in all possible scenarios that might develop. You know, the potential of increased military spending and how that will compound inflation globally. How possible diffusion of terrorism around the world could lead to economic contraction, so on and so on. But it seemed to me that all of the concerns that they had around this issue were sort of technical concerns, marginal concerns, but that their overall sentiment was that the projected path forward that they see for the global economy was unchanged by current events. In other words, if the war continues, if the war escalates, if the war spreads, and if the war ends, none of that ultimately alters the trajectory of the economy and the plans of the OCGFC. Nothing happening in the region is inconsistent with what you could call their grand strategy. And it's not inconsistent with their desired outcome, the desired outcome of their strategy. Now, in my opinion, if we want to know what their general strategy is and what the outcome is that they are seeking, what the OCGFC are seeking in the Middle East, then I think that that has been articulated and is being articulated by Mohammed bin Salman. Bin Salman is working in conjunction with BlackRock. BlackRock is involved in infrastructure development in Saudi Arabia. And of course, the CEO of Aramco has recently been appointed to the BlackRock board of directors. So there is coordination going on here. It seems to me that bin Salman has recruited BlackRock so as not to agitate BlackRock. It's a strategic alliance on his part, considering the fact that he's also working closely with China and working closely with Russia in pursuit of his expansion of his sphere of influence in the region. I've said before that Amin Nasser, the head of Aramco, who's sitting now on the board of BlackRock, his function is to be a sort of human shield for bin Salman. So with regards to bin Salman, I would put it uppermost in your mind that MBS primarily wants his dominion over the region, and he's allied with BlackRock for that pursuit. This will obviously mean that BlackRock will have a role in that project, that regional project. And ultimately, what he wants is stability, security, and prosperity for the region. But he wants all of that under his management. And he doesn't want any rivals or any competitors in the whole region. And that includes Iran, and that includes Israel, and that includes the United States. When he says that the Middle East is going to be the new Europe, he didn't say that unilaterally. This is very likely a plan of the owners and controllers of global financialized capital, and that necessitates a resolution to the Palestinian-Israel conflict, and ultimately a one-state solution, though I don't think that that's something that he himself has in his mind right now. But it is ultimately the only solution that will genuinely allow the region to ever be stable. And this is why there's been an absolute tornado of diplomatic activity over the last 3 weeks between Saudi Arabia, Russia, China, Iran, Egypt, Jordan, and all of the BRICS nations. There's a coordinated effort to try to wrestle political control and diplomatic control over the Palestinian issue away from the Americans. They want to take charge of the mediation. They want to take charge of the resolution process to the exclusion of the United States, because they know that as long as the United States is in control of that process, there will never be a resolution. Everyone in the global South understands that. And I think that even BlackRock understands that. I think that the vision for the region, both for Mohammed bin Salman and for the owners and controllers of global financialized capital, will require an end to radical Zionism, to Netanyahu and his ilk. But I would also say that for Mohammed bin Salman, that vision also requires the destruction and the elimination of Hamas, because you can't have militant groups operating in your new Europe, even if they have exclusively become political parties like Sinn Féin, for example. Because Hamas would not reliably genuflect to the rule of bin Salman. So I think that bin Salman wants to see Hamas eliminated, and he wants the Palestinian Authority to be revived under his auspices. So I still suspect some level of involvement by the GCC, by Saudi Arabia, and by the UAE, some degree of involvement in the Hamas attacks of October the 7th, though this is purely speculation on my part. All I know is that those fighters somehow got better trained than they have ever been before, and they somehow got better equipped and better armed than they've ever been before. And somehow they have been able to execute operations with a level of efficiency and skill that resembles the militias that Saudi Arabia and the UAE have worked with in the past and are working with now, including Wagner. So yes, it's also not inconceivable that Russia has been involved from the beginning as well. I mean, Hamas officials just met in Moscow a few days ago, and they had meetings with Russian officials prior to the attack on October 7th, and they had meetings with bin Salman himself. But as I said, if bin Salman was involved in coordinating this in any way or had any involvement at all, then I think that his ultimate aim is to set Hamas up for destruction, because he wants to see them eliminated. There's only one way that this conflict can end, like all conflicts. The only way that it's going to end is with negotiations and the resumption of some sort of peace process. What bin Salman, what Russia, what China, and all of the BRICS nations want to see, and very likely what BlackRock wants to see, is for the negotiations to be conducted via an international conference, not through a U.S. brokered agreement. I think that they want the U.S. out of the equation. Now, whether the peace process gets underway soon, or whether it follows an escalation of the war or an expansion of the war, or even if it follows a war against Iran, I think that the owners and controllers of global financialized capital are prepared for all contingencies, which is why no one seemed particularly concerned about the exact way that this conflict is going to unfold at that roundtable meeting, because all the contingencies end up at the same place: a non-U.S. brokered peace process for a final settlement agreement on the Palestinian issue. You know, I've been saying for quite some time now that the transition to the global south that we're living through is going to be volatile. Nations are going to grapple with recalibrating their policies and their perspectives and their entire paradigm for how they approach the world. It's going to be an uneven and a rocky process. This is partly due to the fact that the dominant global power in the world is a covert power, the owners and controllers of global financialized capital, and their relationships with governments is discreet, it's opaque, and they're condescending towards states and politicians. I think they'll often communicate through hints, like, for example, and codes. Like, for example, Larry Fink of BlackRock likes to talk about how he cares about peace and the environment and so-called woke values and so on. Well, obviously, Larry Fink doesn't care about any of these things. That's business code. When he says peace, it means defense spending, which could very well mean war as a pretext for increased defense spending. So when he says war, when he says peace, when he says he wants peace, what he actually means is he wants war. It's a business code. So government officials are like a spouse who's trying to figure out what their spouse wants without them ever being told directly what it is. They're just trying to figure it out. So they have to rely on their past experience and how they think that the relationship works, but it's not based on actual information. So they try to figure out what they're supposed to do to make their spouse happy without ever being told explicitly what it is. They just have to guess. And that's based on how their relationship has been in the past. But the relationship now between the owners and controllers of global financialized capital and governments, that relationship has changed. And herein lies the problem. I don't think, for instance, that the Pentagon itself has any clear understanding of why they're building up forces in the Middle East right now. Israel doesn't have a plan. They don't know what they're supposed to do next. But everybody knows, Washington knows, that Iran has always been in their sights, has been in their sights for a long time. So everyone's wondering, is that what we're doing now? Is that what we're supposed to do now? Is that happening today? And I legitimately don't think that the Biden administration has an answer. They're operating on learned reflexes, embedded institutional reflexes, both Israel and Washington. They don't know what to do, if they're supposed to do a ground invasion or not. They don't know how far they're supposed to go. They don't know if they're supposed to continue with bombing, just carpet bombing, or if they're supposed to do hostage extraction. and they don't know what they're supposed to do if they're going to attack Iran. Are they just supposed to hit the nuclear sites? Are they supposed to do a regime change? Is it going to be an invasion and occupation? There's no clear objective, neither for Gaza, nor for Iran, nor for Lebanon, nor for Syria. And that's because, one, the United States and Israel have become terrible at diplomacy and communication. They're just operating on embedded reflexes without any understanding of where they are, or what the situation is, or what the conditions are that they're dealing with. And two, because the OCGFC are no longer communicating or coordinating exclusively with the US anymore, or exclusively with the West anymore. They're making plans with each other. And the Americans and the Israeli government are informed on a need-to-know basis. And this is why the United States has suddenly started talking about a long-term resolution to the Palestinian issue. When's the last time you heard them talk about that? But that's because they can see that control over the diplomatic process is slipping from their grasp. Russia, China, Saudi Arabia, and all of the BRICS nations have been united in calling for a lasting solution, and they blamed the current conflict on the lack of a lasting solution to the Palestinian issue. Everyone voted for the Russian resolution calling for a ceasefire, including Saudi Arabia and including the UAE and even France. And nobody voted for the US resolution at the UN. And China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and all the BRICS nations are calling for an international peace conference to address the Palestinian issue. And this reflects, in my opinion, the preference of the owners and controllers of global financialized capital. You know, there's a saying in the US that you dance with the one who brung you. Well, the US established the OCGFC. They built the OCGFC. They built private sector power. And they're the ones who brought them to the dance. But now they look around and see that the OCGFC are not dancing with the one who brung them. And they're afraid that they're going to get left standing alone at the party. Because the OCGFC, the owners and controllers of global financialized capital, don't like you like that anymore. So now, the danger is that America is going to act like someone's impotent ex, who is in a desperate and drunken stupor, and who thinks that the only way he can win his girl back is by smashing things and starting a brawl and getting dramatic. I've said it before, and I'll repeat it again now. The power and influence of the West, and specifically of the United States, is going to perish in the bombardment of Gaza. They're going to lose control of the Middle East, no matter whether they expand the war or not. No matter if they attack Iran or not, the end result is going to be failure and humiliation. And the whole world is going to walk away from them. Jazakumullahu khairan wa assalamu alaikum.